If you're planning a trip to the Swiss Alps and wondering where should I stay, then this is the video for you. From mountain views to charming Swiss villages to modern conveniences, every traveler wants something a little bit different from their home base. So answering the question, where should I stay, can be a little bit tricky.
After spending more than 6 months traveling the Jungfrau region, we have lots of thoughts on where you could stay. But we're not going to spell out the top 5 places to stay near Interlaken or the top 10 places to avoid near Lauterbrunnen. Instead, we're going to equip you with the most helpful information so that you can choose the best town or village for your next trip.
We've narrowed down your home base options to 7 towns or villages worth considering, and we're going to elaborate on why you may or may not want to stay there based on a few criteria, such as proximity to popular locations, conveniences, the charm level, and average Airbnb cost. So, if you're ready to scout out locations, let's get started.
Interlaken is the gateway to the Lauterbrunnen Valley and the Jungfrau region. It means between the lakes because it's nestled between Lake Thun and Lake Brienz. Of all the places we'll mention in this video, Interlaken is closest to the big Swiss cities and the airports. In fact, the first time we spent 1 whole month in this area, we chose to stay in Interlaken. That's because we really didn't know exactly what we were gonna do, and Interlaken was the most central location. Interlaken really is the best location if you're looking to enjoy a variety of activities. It's a great base for excursions along the lakes, such as Giesbach Falls on Lake Thun. Nope, that's the wrong lake. Such as Giesbach Falls on Brienz or the castles along Lake Thun. Plus, it's awesome for adventuring further beyond the Jungfrau region to places such as Bern or Lucerne. Why? Because nothing is really that far from here. Even so, don't be surprised to find that it takes about an hour to get almost everywhere, especially if your destination includes a mountain lift along the way. So if you're only going to explore a smaller area in the mountains, one of these other locations might provide better proximity to your planned adventures. But overall, Interlaken ranks #1 as a sightseeing hub, meaning less time on trains and more time enjoying the beautiful Swiss landscapes. As a tourist hub, Interlaken has all the amenities. For real, there are 2 train stations, lots of bus routes with frequent stops, loads of restaurants with international cuisine, big grocery stores, pharmacies, and the list goes on. Staying here also means that you're closer to the airports or wherever else you'll be visiting in Switzerland. All of this also means that Interlaken is the #1 home base if convenience is high on your list. But for all that it offers in convenience and location, we definitely think it lacks charm. Honestly, the town feels like it was made for tourists, and it probably was, which means you cannot walk the streets without seeing shops selling watches, cuckoo clocks, and chocolate galore. Thankfully, Unterzane across the river is way more authentic, but we still gotta say Interlaken ranks dead last in this category. For Airbnb rental cost, it sits right in the middle of the pack, but there are a lot of good reasons why this might be the best choice for you if you're traveling on a budget. Obviously, it's a larger town, so there are just more options in terms of lodging, from Airbnbs to hotels and even hostels too. If you book a rental with a kitchen, you will save tons of money versus eating out all the time. I am not kidding when I say you could easily spend more money on food than on lodging if you're not careful. And the big stores like Coop and Migros offer plenty of products in their store brands, which means you could stretch your budget even further. And because of its location, you can enjoy endless adventures without breaking the bank on transportation costs. Which brings me to a few other factors you need to consider before choosing Interlaken as your home base. When you stay in the area, you get the Interlaken guest card, which gives you free local transportation and scores you discounts on certain activities. That means the train from Interlaken West to Interlaken Oost, the train from Oost to Wilderswil, buses within Interlaken and Wilderswil, the bus from Interlaken to Grindelwald, and even buses partway along Lake Thun are totally free. This is incredibly handy if you're traveling without a train pass, which we almost never recommend, or if you're traveling with nothing but the half-fare card, which we recommend surprisingly often. But it also means that if you have the Berner Oberland Regional Pass, you'll get no additional benefit from this guest card since those routes are already covered. I know we're throwing around lots of details about train passes, so if you've never seen our ultimate guide to Swiss train passes, be sure and check that video out later. Another benefit of staying in Interlaken is it's usually warmer and sunnier than other places on this list, but that's also a trade-off. It's the gateway to the mountains, which means you're not actually in the mountains, meaning hitting the trail or enjoying that sweet smell of cow poo directly from your doorstep is pretty unlikely. But you can watch the sunset from just about anywhere in town and gaze at the Jungfrau from Hohe Matte or Unterzane. So Interlaken ranks 5th in this other factors category. If we wanted Interlaken to be our home base, we would stay within a 10-minute walk of the Interlaken Oost station. The first area to consider is near the Gymnasium bus stop, just a short ride from Lake Brienz, the Interlaken Oost train station, and all the amenities near Interlaken West. But you can also walk to the Oost station in about 8 minutes. We stayed in this area last year and loved it. We felt like we were so close to everything while tucked away in a quieter neighborhood surrounded by locals. And as an added bonus, we were just a short walk from Jana's favorite grocery store, Aldi. Another good spot would be somewhere directly between the West and Oost stations, which is where you'll find most of the hotels. There are frequent buses, and you're no more than a 10-minute walk from either train station. So if you value convenience, it's hard to beat this area, though charming and quiet are not the words I would use to describe it. Keep in mind that the West Station gives you all the amenities, but it also adds an additional bus or train ride to every trip you'll take into the mountains. So make sure you really value the shopping, restaurants, and other conveniences if you choose to stay here.
Wilderswil is just one train stop from Interlaken towards the mountains, but it's often overlooked by tourists as just a stop along the way to bigger and better things. But we like to throw it into the mix as a possible home base and specifically as an alternative to staying in Interlaken. It's no secret that we're kind of partial to this little village. We lived here for 3 months this summer and pretty much loved everything about it, especially once we found the local cheese shop and the village bakery, our favorite hiking trails, and the ease of transportation connections. There's one train station in town with departures every 30 minutes towards Interlaken and every 30 minutes in the direction of Lauterbrunnen and Grindelwald. It's also only an hour and a half from Jungfraujoch, which is only 6 to 8 minutes longer than if you were leaving from Wengen or Grindelwald, meaning you're way closer to the mountains than you might actually think. As an added bonus, the cogwheel train up to Scenic also leaves from the Wilderswil train station. For sightseeing, it's basically as good as Interlaken because you're 5 minutes closer to the mountains, but that also means you're one train or one bus away from reaching the lakes compared to Interlaken, which is why we've ranked it as second for proximity to sightseeing. Wilderswil has a handful of restaurants, hotels, 2 grocery stores near the train station, but there's not a pharmacy. However, you really are going to be able to find almost everything that you need from there, maybe just not the extensive options you'd find in Interlaken. Even living here for 3 months this summer, we rarely found that we had to go to a bigger town to find a bigger store. We also like that it sits along the route for bus 105, meaning in less than 10 minutes we can reach Interlaken West with shopping, grocery stores, and restaurants, plus connections outside of the valley. You can reach Interlaken by train in 5 minutes, Lauterbrunnen in 15, and Grindelwald in 25, meaning you're really never too far if you need anything. So for all of these reasons, we have ranked Wilderswil as third for convenience. But honestly, we think Wilderswil is one of the most charming and authentic villages that is still central enough to be a great tourist home base. You'll often find locals walking around the streets, the houses are gorgeous, the gardens are so beautiful, and I love that Wilderswil is surrounded by lots of local farms, and really good farm fridges too. Plus there's a playground on the edge of town that we love to go walk to, and we often see local families just hanging out there together. Plus, nothing is really like screaming for your attention like lots of the touristy places in other towns. Wilderswil is hard to beat for its authenticity. That's really hard to say. Wilderswil is really hard to beat for its authenticity, so it ranks second in this category. I know, if this place is oozing with charm, you're probably wondering, well, what ranks number 1 on our list? Well, stick around and we'll show you soon. But how does it perform on cost? Well, according to our Airbnb data, it is actually the cheapest of the places we're ranking today. But like Interlaken, there's probably a few other factors you might want to know about. A huge plus is that you still get the Interlaken guest card when you stay in Wilderswil. That covers all of the trains and buses from Wilderswil to Interlaken, meaning you can stay in a way more local and charming village and still have access to all of the amenities at no additional cost. Well, except for the cost of tourist tax, which you have to pay no matter where you stay. There are beautiful walks in the hills surrounding the village and in the fields between Wilderswil and Interlaken, meaning you can wander so much farther and in so much more solitude than you could by staying in Interlaken. There are also some really unique food places that we absolutely love. If you're curious to see those, you can check them out later in our Interlaken food video. While you'll enjoy great Jungfrau views on a clear day and even be able to see all the way to Lake Brienz, keep in mind that you're still not actually in the mountains. Although you will still be able to enjoy the sweet sound of cowbells clanging or sheep bells ringing, especially in the spring and fall. If we chose Wilderswil as a home base, which we usually do, we'd like to stay a little bit away from the main road and the train station to have some extra peace and quiet. For example, the train station is here, and this is the main road between Interlaken and Lauterbrunnen. Bus 105 comes from Interlaken and then turns and heads up here on Kirchgasse. We like this area within like a 10-minute walk from the train station, but it's still near bus stops. An added benefit is that when you're going to Interlaken, you can hop on the bus one stop before the train station and snag a seat because loads of people get on the train station and it gets really crowded. But we also think this older area of Wilderswil near the river is really pretty. It's close to the train station and it's only a short walk from the beautiful village of Kasteigbühler.
It's probably true that Grindelwald, the village, not the Harry Potter character, needs no introduction, but we're giving one to you anyway. Nestled in a bowl-shaped valley at the base of the mighty Eiger, Grindelwald enjoys some of the most stunning scenery on the planet. We stayed here for the first time this fall. We weren't sure if we were actually gonna like the town because, well, we'll tell you why in a minute, but we absolutely fell in love with the small neighborhood streets and the incredible alpine vistas. And not gonna lie, after staying here, Jana hopped online and started looking at houses for sale. If your sightseeing plans focus on Jungfraujoch, Grindelwald First, Manneken, or Pfingsteg, then you could enjoy 3 or 4 days here without ever leaving the valley, making Grindelwald a perfect home base for short trips focused on a small area. But if your travel plans will take you to Lauterbrunnen, Mürren, Interlaken, or to the lakes and beyond, then Grindelwald is a little less central. You'll have to make your way out of this valley every time you want to leave, so Grindelwald ranks 4th in sightseeing proximity for the Jungfrau region. Side note, if any of those activities are on your Switzerland travel bucket list, you can find links to our guides in the description below. But for convenience, you'll find Grindelwald has everything you need and then some. There's a huge Coop grocery store near the main train station, as well as a Migros that's smaller in the center of town, and way more restaurants than you will ever need. You'll find lots of hotels and plenty of Airbnbs, and if you desire luxury, this is probably the best place to find it. There are 3 train stations: Grindelwald Terminal with connections to Manneken and Eigergletscher, Grindelwald Grund with a train that heads up along the base of the Eiger to Kleine Scheidig, and the main Grindelwald station, which is directly in the village. Most of you will likely use the main station as your hub and connect to the other stations when you need to. There are also quite a few bus routes running through the village and beyond, so you'll have plenty of options for nearby adventures. Because of this, Grindelwald ranks a close second to Interlaken for overall convenience. But now for a controversial subject. We have a love-hate relationship with Grindelwald. Dorfstrasse, the main street running through the village, is overcrowded, way too tourist-focused, and just not that charming in our opinion. There are high-rise hotels, plenty of mediocre restaurants, and just not that much that feels like an authentic Swiss village. So when it comes to this main area of Grindelwald, we'd probably consider Interlaken to be more charming, which is saying a lot. But if you're willing to stay just a little bit away from the action, there are parts of Grindelwald that feel the exact opposite. We might really dislike the touristy center of the village, but outside of that, wow, we could live there. All in all, it's really hard to rank Grindelwald on charm and authenticity because that will greatly depend on where you stay and spend your time. So because of that, we're placing it 5th in this category. As perhaps the most famous place to stay in this region, costs follow suit, so it ranks 5th on our list in terms of Airbnb prices. You can always find budget options, but they're fewer and farther between here. And because of the location, you're probably gonna want a train pass like the Berner Oberland Regional Pass or the Top of Europe Pass to control costs on transportation. By the way, I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but we're pulling this Airbnb cost data for one of our free spreadsheet downloads. So you can find that link in the description below or on our website if you're interested. We clearly have a lot to say about Grindelwald, Switzerland, because here are a few more factors to consider. A benefit of staying in Grindelwald is that you receive the free local guest card. In our opinion, it isn't quite as valuable as the Interlaken guest card, but you'll receive free transport on some of the local bus lines. That means you could find a cheaper Airbnb in one of the more charming areas of the village along a bus route without having to worry about the cost of additional transportation. The Top of Europe Pass, for example, doesn't cover any of the buses, so the guest card could come in handy. But the Berner Oberland Pass covers the local buses as well as the mountain lines. Another great thing about Grindelwald is the sunshine. Because it's a big open valley running east to west, you'll see plenty of light throughout the day. And the village itself is perched on a hill facing south, which only increases the amount of sun you can enjoy. According to Jana, sunshine is like medicine for the soul, so she's a happy traveler when we're in Grindelwald. On top of that, the setting is absolutely stunning. Epic views of the Eiger, Schreckhorn, and Wetterhorn, and endless walking and hiking options through the hills and farms surrounding the village. So where would we look for lodging near Grindelwald? Well, definitely not Dorfstrasse, as convenient as that might be. We really like this area just one street above the village, which has one of my favorite cafes in the whole region, and the far edge of the village just past the church. Both areas are serviced by bus lines, plus are way more peaceful, quiet, and charming with lots more locals.
While Grindelwald sits in a valley, it's probably not the most iconic valley in the Jungfrau region because that well-deserved title goes to Lauterbrunnen. This has been on the tourist map for centuries because, well, just look at how beautiful it is. It sits in a deep glacial valley with cliffs over 600 meters tall. We first came here on our honeymoon in 2012 and we were blown away by the beauty. And even though we've been here dozens of times since then, we're still just in awe of this glorious place, especially in the spring when all of the waterfalls are just brimming with snowmelt. Lauterbrunnen is perfectly situated for exploring Wengen and Jungfraujoch on one side, or Gimmelwald, Mürren, and the Schildhorn on the other side. And in fact, like Grindelwald, just like Grindelwald, you could stay in the Lauterbrunnen Valley for days with endless sightseeing opportunities without really having to leave the area. It's also just a 20-minute train ride from Interlaken. So combining those factors, we've ranked this third for proximity to sightseeing because it's so easy to get up into the mountains or out to the lakes from here. But the sightseeing isn't as well matched by the amenities. There's a convenience store in the train station and a Coop grocery store nearby. Of course, there are restaurants and tourist shops in the village, but nothing has really stood out to us as very memorable. 2 train lines, a bus line, and a cable car all leave from the main station and take you in pretty much every direction. In fact, the bus line runs down the valley past Trommelbach Falls to Stachelberg, which is the lift that takes you up to Gimmelwald, Mürren, and the Schildhorn. If you're coming with a car, there are 2 parking garages you can use to park in the valley, but they can definitely fill up, especially during peak season. Also keep in mind that there is one road that goes into and out of Lauterbrunnen Valley, so on a nice day or the weekends, it can definitely be bumper-to-bumper traffic. For these reasons, Lauterbrunnen ranks 4th for convenience. Like Grindelwald, Lauterbrunnen feels like it used to be this really authentic, charming little village tucked deep into the Lauterbrunnen Valley, but now it's flooded with tourists year-round. However, if you go outside of the village, you're now in the land of farmers and locals, and lots of cows too. So make sure you stroll all the way back to the end of the valley and you'll get the views that inspired authors like Tolkien, and you'll even pass some of our favorite farm bridges along the way. But this category is about ranking the villages, and so when it comes to authenticity and charm, we have ranked Lauterbrunnen as 4th in that category. However, it can be a surprisingly budget destination, ranking 3rd for average Airbnb cost. If you go down farther into the valley, you can find some killer deals, and there's campgrounds out there as well. Plus, you're never really that far from a bus line, so if you're willing to give up a little bit of convenience, you can find a pretty good deal on lodging. Okay, here are a few additional factors to consider before choosing Lauterbrunnen as your home base. You do get a local guest card for staying here, although we don't really think that's a reason to choose to stay in Lauterbrunnen because it really only provides a discount to Trommelbach Falls. As far as we know, it doesn't provide any discount on local transportation. So if you do plan to stay farther into the valley, definitely consider the Swiss Travel Pass or the Berner Oberland Pass because those are the only ones that cover the local bus lines. Another consideration is sunlight. Lauterbrunnen Valley is a deep, narrow valley that runs north-south, which means not as much sunshine. And if you're like me, I crave the sunshine, so dark places can be kind of difficult. Also, less sun tends to mean cooler temperatures, so either you'll be a fan of that or not so much. But holy cow, what else can we say about the beauty of this place? Especially in the spring when the cliffs are plunging with snowmelt. I mean, Lauterbrunnen Valley is just like a fantasy land. But combining all those things, we've still ranked Lauterbrunnen as 6 out of 7 for these other factors to consider. Honestly, I don't think we would choose to stay in Lauterbrunnen, probably because of my preference for more sunshine. But if we did choose to stay here, I think we would probably go farther into the valley and stay maybe on a farm, in an Airbnb, or on a bed and breakfast just to have that charming, peaceful nature. And again, we're never really that far from the village, just a bus stop away. But here's the thing, if we're gonna be that close to the mountains, we'd rather just be up in the mountains. So that's where we're taking you next.
Now we've arrived at the Alpine villages, where mountain views, scenic hikes, and sounds of cowbells promise to fill your days. And for many travelers, Wengen is near the top of the list. Although we haven't personally stayed here, we've been in and through Wengen many times, and we've talked with a handful of our viewers like you who stayed in Wengen and loved it. Wengen sits on the train line toward Jungfraujoch in one direction and down to Lauterbrunnen in the other. This makes it seem pretty close to a lot of adventures in the region, but the reality according to train timetables is a little bit different. Jungfraujoch, as close as it is, takes an hour and 25 minutes. And reaching Grindelwald, Mürren, or Interlaken, even though it seems like you could reach out and touch them, will require multiple train connections. But there is a cable car to Mannlichen with some of the best views around that leaves right from the village. And a train down to Lauterbrunnen takes only 13 minutes. So throwing together the good and the bad, Wengen ranks 5th in sightseeing proximity for the region. Like Lauterbrunnen, there's a convenience store at the train station and a small Coop grocery store across the street. But we find that prices in these small stores are usually higher than the bigger ones because there are less budget options available. There are lots of tourist shops and activities and quite a few restaurants for a small village. And we think it's really nice that Wengen can be reached by train, which isn't the case for the next 2 spots on this list. Wengen is a car-free village, which means you can't drive there, but there's a parking garage down at the Lauterbrunnen train station, and trains run late at night, so this ranks 5th on our list for convenience. For most of you looking for Swiss charm, I think you'll find a lot to like about Wengen. The architecture is beautiful, and you'll find plenty of those half-timbered buildings with flower boxes on the windows. But it also caters a bit too much to tourism for our liking, and it feels a lot like Grindelwald in that regard. Basically, imagine an authentic-looking village that's been expanded for tourism. The hotels are taller, the shops are geared towards tourists, and there are amenities like spas and playgrounds and even mini golf too. If you're looking for more of a resort feel, you'll like it here. Don't get me wrong, it's not ugly at all, but if you're wanting something more authentic, then Wengen probably isn't the place for you, coming in 6th on our list. Another reason to look elsewhere is the cost, with average Airbnb rentals being higher in Wengen than anywhere else on our list. And because of its location, transportation and parking costs could easily get out of control if you don't choose a good train pass. Here are a few other factors to consider. Like Lauterbrunnen, there's a Wengen guest card, but we just don't think this will offer much value to most of you. But compared to Lauterbrunnen, you should see a lot more sunlight because of its higher elevation and somewhat south-facing slope. Plus, when you're here, you're actually in the mountains. Some of the best views of Lauterbrunnen Valley, Mürren, and Schilthorn can be enjoyed here, and you can do plenty of hiking as well. But keep in mind that the hikes will be pretty much straight up or straight down regardless of the direction you go. So for these other factors, we still rank Wengen 7th. Like Lauterbrunnen, Wengen is another place we probably wouldn't choose to stay. There's a lot to like, but it just doesn't really suit our style. There are good, but not great hikes from the village in our opinion, and we really like to be able to walk out our door and have numerous trail options. On top of that, if we're in the mountains, we want a little more peace and quiet to enjoy the natural beauty, and Wengen is a little too much of a pass-through place for day trippers to be that. But if we were to choose a place to stay here, we'd probably look for something across the train tracks in this area, or just outside of the village in the opposite direction.
As you gaze from Wengen across to the other side of Lauterbrunnen Valley, you'll see Mürren, the next spot on our list. And in full transparency, we honeymooned here in 2012, so we'll try to be as impartial as possible. And we'll live up to that promise by starting with the fact that Mürren ranks dead last on our list for proximity to sightseeing. And that's because it's just so difficult to get up or down from here. You either have to take a cable car and a bus, or you have to take a train and a cable car just to get down to Lauterbrunnen. Although it's not very central in the region, there's so much you can see and do from right here. In our opinion, you could spend an entire weekend up here without ever having to go down to the valley. There's just one small Coop grocery store here, and like in Wengen, the prices tend to be a little bit higher. And while the restaurant options aren't plentiful, there are still enough choices to keep you happy for at least a week. We also think that the food here is generally better compared to Lauterbrunnen and Wengen. Maybe the best part about staying up here though is that you can truly hike from your doorstep. Some of our favorite hikes in the whole area are here, and there are options for just about every ability level. Something to keep in mind is that this end of Mürren is connected by the Mürren BLM, which only runs until around 8 p.m. So if you're planning to return to Mürren later in the evening, you'll have to use the Schilthornbahn on the other side of the village. It's only about a 10-minute walk between the two, but keep that in mind when you choose your lodging for Mürren. And don't forget that the section of the Schilthornbahn from Stechelberg to Mürren is only covered by the Swiss Travel Pass or the Brunner Oberlin Pass. And if you decide to drive here, Mürren is a car-free village, so you'll have to leave your vehicle down in the Lauterbrunnen Valley below. So for all of these reasons combined, Mürren ranks 6th in line for convenience. But for a charming alpine village with all the necessary amenities, Mürren is hard to beat. It feels so much more quaint than Wengen, although it sees plenty of tourists too. And while it's one of the most popular ski areas around, it somehow managed to still remain pretty traditional. But while it oozes with charm, it's maybe not as traditional as we would like because so many tourists come and so few locals tend to stick around. but it feels incredibly authentic once you get out of the village and into the mountains. It's just you and nature and lots of cows. So while it's far from perfect, we think Mürren is one of the most romantic spots around, which is why we chose to honeymoon here. It's a great spot to just slow down, hike, and enjoy some views in the Jungfrau region. For these reasons, Mürren comes third on our list for charm and authenticity. I know, you're still curious which one is number one on our list, but hang on, it's coming up next, so we're almost there. Overall, Mürren comes in 6th on the list for average Airbnb cost, and that's because the cost can vary so widely depending on the time of year you visit. Of course, during ski season, the rentals are going to be peak sky high, but you can still find some pretty good deals if you come visit in the summer. Like the cost of a rental, your budget can change dramatically based on how you travel. For example, if you go to the grocery store and cook a few meals, you have the opportunity to save a ton of money. Likewise, we really recommend that if you stay here, you get a train pass to help cap your transportation costs, since every time you leave the village, you're literally going to be taking a train or a cable car. All right, here are a few more helpful things to know about Mürren. Mürren also has a guest card, but unfortunately we don't find it to be that helpful, although it does give you a free guided tour to the Spruce waterfall. But if you have our guide to Mürren, then you already know how to get there. Of all the spots on our list, Mürren is the highest, sitting at 1,650 meters in elevation, meaning it's definitely going to be the coldest of all these places. Unlike Wengen, you won't see quite as much sun, and when it rains, you'll definitely be in a misty, cloudy fog. But absolutely no other spot offers better views of the big three, the Eiger, Monk, and Jungfrau. Sometimes it seems like they're so close that you could just reach out and touch them. Plus, there are waterfalls, alpine pastures, and mountain huts that you can reach with no transportation other than your own 2 feet. So, with all these factors in mind, we have ranked Mürren as first on this list. In case you can't tell, we would definitely stay in Mürren again. And really, there's no bad spot to stay in town, although personally, we probably would not stay on that main road between the 2 stations just for more peace and quiet. This road running down toward Gimmelwald, or this one going slightly uphill from the train stations, would be really good options too. But if you really want to get away from it all, there's so many little huts peppering all the hillsides around Mürren, and there may not be a more peaceful place on earth.
Much of what applies to Mürren applies in Gimmelwald as well. However, you can't dial up the charm and authenticity any more than this alpine village. To be fair, we haven't actually stayed here yet, but many of you, our YouTube audience, stayed here this summer and loved it, and we spent plenty of our days enjoying it as well. From the village, you can quickly get onto hiking trails where you'll hardly see anyone else. So if hiking is your reason for coming to Gimmelwald, you won't be disappointed. Beyond that, it's not very well connected though, similar to Mürren. But since it sits 1 station lower on the Schildhornbahn, you'll save a few minutes traveling to most places. So it ranks 6th on our list for proximity to sightseeing. Like Mürren, Gimmelwald is also a car-free Swiss village. If you stay in Gimmelwald, we highly recommend the Berner Oberland Regional Pass because it covers transportation on this section of the Schildhornbahn, which is the only way in and out of town, unless you want to walk a lot. There's no grocery store here, so you'll have to do your shopping in Mürren or Lauterbrunnen, although there are a handful of farm fridges and restaurants. We often like to stop for drinks at Pinch and Gimmelwald or buy local ice cream from Esther's Guest House. For these reasons, Gimmelwald ranks last for convenience. Dead last. But let's be real, you can't get much more authentic than Gimmelwald. It's a working village with active locals and farmers. The buildings are beyond gorgeous, the gardens are lush, and it's a lot of fun to watch the animals in the nearby farms. You'll see precisely stacked wood piles everywhere, reminding you that wood is still a primary heating source for many homes. And here, you're 100% in the mountains, tucked further back into the valley than in any other place on this list. So all of that earns Gimmelwald first place on our list for the most charming alpine village. It's not hard to find affordable lodging in Gimmelwald, but keep in mind there aren't a whole lot of options. So for what it does have, it ranks 2nd on our list in terms of cost. But it's gonna take a little more effort and planning to cook at home if you're staying here, so food could easily break your budget if you're not careful. Here are a few other factors to consider. Like Mürren, a guest card is included in your stay, but it probably doesn't offer much to entice you. Weather and sunlight will be pretty similar as well, but since Gimmelwald sits 300 meters lower, you'll probably see temperatures a few degrees higher as well. But seriously, walk just a little ways out of town in any direction and you'll find hiking trails and scenic spots that hardly anyone but the locals will ever see. The hills surrounding Gimmelwald are unspoiled, majestic nature at its finest. There's really not a bad spot in Gimmelwald, but we've observed that so many people who visit the village walk from the cable car station down this road to about here and then turn around and head back. So if I wanted to have a peaceful spot to myself, I'd probably look for something that's not in that section right there. But really, compared to Mürren, and especially to Wengen, you'll feel like you're getting the mountains all to yourself here.
Obviously, there are a lot of details to consider when you're planning your trip to the Swiss Alps. Beyond these tips about where to stay, we've crafted a complete guide about when to visit month by month, including a free spreadsheet download of Airbnb stats, weather facts, and train pass data. Check that out next, and we'll see you in Switzerland.